was originally an art dominated by men. It was not until the 20th century that women began to enter this field. With the development of society and the rise of feminist movement, the career of female architects has experienced four stages. Feminist career beginning in the late 19th century, then boomed after the World War II, and then diversification after the 1970s. From 2000 years to present is the beginning of a new era. Years of architecture development, female architects are few in number and mostly in a subordinate position. As of 2020, there have only been 5 female architects in the last 51 Pritzker Prize. Among them, only Zaha Hadid won the Pritzker Prize in her personal capacity, and the other 4 were jointly won by her partners. When summarizing design styles, people often conclude women design work that is feminine, but not atmospheric enough. But the truth is that when we try to take stock of women architects, their work is often very different and ungendered. In an environment dominated by male architects, the success of female architects naturally comes into focus. They rose to the ranks of famous architects by virtue of their talent and hard work, but at the same time, they invariably suffer more setbacks and pay a greater price.
It is one of the most beautiful skylines on the planet, and it has been shaped by one of the most talented architects in the world, Jeanna Gang. Known best for creating Aqua, an 83-story work of art in the heart of Chicago. Her forward-thinking approach to design and mission to connect people to their environment has made Jeanna Gang a leading architect of this generation.
It's a small town, and my father was an engineer and civil engineer for the county, doing all the roads and bridges. And so I just grew up really connecting to that community, but also the outdoors. And then my mom, of course, was a Girl Scout troop leader, and she introduced me to, camping in the wilderness.
During her college career, and it was this gorgeous, stunningly romantic city and the one-of-a-kind architecture that captured her heart and helped to inform how she sees the world.
Having a lecture in front of Notre Dame about the building in the space, it was just
magical.
Yeah, magical.
What were the early days of being an architect, especially a woman, like for you?
There were always people that said, you shouldn't do that, or, you can't do that. Not my parents, they always supported me, but, like when people say that, it makes you want to do it more. So,
So you did get that. You got a lot of, you can't do that, and
here and there, yes, and it was just enough.
Today, almost half of all students of architecture are women, a stark contrast from the early 70s, before Title IX, when gender discrimination in colleges stopped many women from going into fields like architecture. Even now, Jeanna Gang is one of just 17% of registered architects who are female. And she isn't just an architect, she runs her company. Jeanna is the founding principal of Studio Gang, an architecture and urban design studio with offices in Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and Paris. Studio Gang has projects ranging from cultural centers, like the American Museum of Natural History, to public projects like the new Global Terminal at O'Hare Airport, to mixed-use towers and public parks. She's written 3 books on architecture, and in 2019 was named one of Time's most influential people.
The new book is really about what ties all of our projects together, the ideas that cohere across different categories and families. There are continuities, and so we take the opportunity to point out what things they have in common. We're in a time where it's very important and urgent, in fact, what we do next. How do we build? How do we design buildings that will connect us more strongly and make it more obvious that we are part of Earth? We're not giving up on Earth. So we're looking for ways that buildings can make stronger connections between us and our environment and create social spaces where people can connect to each other. A theme that always reoccurs in our work is pattern and rhythm, because architecture is an unmoving, monumental kind of art. And I think tall buildings really lend themselves to this kind of study, because you can do these moves in the building that affect the inside. They're a benefit to the person living there. In these slight shifts, you can start to create a real dynamic that enlivens the skyline. And these patterns can contribute to how the building performs. One of them is City Hyde Park. You can see these balconies displayed along the south edge. It's really just acting like a sunshade that you can inhabit. It's almost like having a porch, even though you're living in the middle of the city. So they're letting people step outside to connect to their environment, say hi to their neighbors. There's a dynamic to it. It's very engaging. Even if you don't live there, you can experience this movement and see the sun patterns moving across this building. What's really interesting with the American Museum of Natural History is we're working with this idea of flow, but flow from the aspect of moving people in and through the building, but also this aspect of flow in terms of space and discovery. And we've used a lot of analog methods for studying flow, even working with blocks of ice in the middle of the winter, melting them with a blowtorch or hot water to capture these qualities that happen from flow and embody them into the project. Almost like if you're going through a canyon or some kind of landscape, in an effort to make people curious about science. Going toward terrestrial is learning lessons from how nature constructs things. There's lots of interesting things we can learn from nature, both from how animals build nests, but also just the physics of how things stand up and how they can work without huge impact in each environment, without using a lot of energy. This is this incredible ravine at UC Santa Cruz, and students come across this bridge through a forest of redwoods to get to Kresge College. What's interesting about the redwoods is they actually are families, and they're connected below the ground. So we try to preserve the clusters intact and weave in between and in and out of them. So looking at all the things that live in this forest, we were able to come up with a design here that maintains the clusters and families of redwoods. In biology, the tree canopy we know is full full of biodiversity. There's so many communities that live way up in the canopy. So it's this interesting unexplored area, but it also holds a special place in our imagination. And this idea of being up in the tree house or climbing up in the trees is something that I've always tried to capture in projects like the Writers' Theater with this walkabout that people can go out on during intermission or go out and be really literally in the canopy of the oaks surrounding. And in the University of Chicago Paris Center, and the placement of the main great room up at the top, perched above the height of the neighboring buildings, to give people a sense of this elevated height. Up there, you'll be surrounded by these roof gardens and views of Paris all around. This is called a stage buoy. It was our design for a stage for the artist and performer Nick Cave. Basically, we thought about what is a stage, and we wanted something that they could interact with. But what's really interesting is just in designing a movable object like this, which can all be moving at different times, like this. This is just too fun. To solve this, we have to work with other people besides just architects and experimenting with the material and asking the question, what are you made of? I think this aspect of our practice really goes beyond the digital experimentation and really works directly hands-on with materials to find out their qualities. One of the things we've been really thinking about is this age-old idea, almost a cliche, glass equals transparency equals a clear, free, open society. And today, everything is clad in glass. So it almost like lost the power of that aspect of transparency. We talk about transparency in a more nuanced way. So this project is going to be made of hybrid materials to provide protection from overheating, which also produces a low reflectivity to the building. And all of these are very important qualities to reduce glare, to reduce bird strikes, so the building can perform on the level of a city. We have to think for the environment, for the inhabitants, the careful selection of the exact qualities that you want in the glass so that it responds to its specific environment. Maybe the next step beyond transparency is to create, with our buildings, a culture of care. And what would that look like? All living things live in a network with each other. So how can we enjoy working with the environment and really reinforce our culture of care? The idea of connecting strongly to this planet it's an antidote for us. And I think that's what we're striving for with this book. It's very inspiring to think about our buildings working for the inhabitants, but also working toward stronger connections with other living things, and do that with an architecture that is treading very lightly on the planet.
Change isn't happening fast enough for women in architecture. I suggest that all firms should be set a target to close their gender pay gap. I'm hoping that many more women start doing top buildings, and then it will become a non-issue.